The following is an encore presentation of stories from the Dooralong Transformation Centre. David is joining us in the studio. David was talking to Kath and Mick on the breakfast show. He's been for his coffee, so he's a lot more lively now, perhaps. The caffeine is coursing through those veins. So, David, how long have you been at Dooralong now?
This time around, I've been there for just over 3 months.
Yeah. You say this time around because this
is the second time I've been to Dooralong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there just over 6 months ago. I left after I'd been there for about 8.5 months, which is, the bulk of the program.
Yeah. That seems odd. That I can understand people perhaps leaving in the first week or the first month, but after 8.5 months, it's a long. It's a big thing to just turn your back on all that hard work that you've done.
Yeah, I think that something like that started happening a couple of months before the fact, and I'd started, my attitudes had started to change, and sort of elusively and seductively, I'd sort of been pulled out and back to the old ways of thinking, being physically fit and to a certain degree mentally fit, and I kind of felt okay, I left, and as I was leaving, driving away from Dooralong past the front gates, I didn't feel quite right. I do remember feeling that this is not a good idea. Unfortunately, I was too far gone at that point to really do anything else.
So what was going on in your head at that time? Did you think, I've got this beat, I've done it 8.5 months, I don't need the final few sort of weeks, I can do this on my own? Or was it a deeper...
I definitely had the deluded feeling that I was going to be able to manage.
Yeah.
And that's just insane.
Yeah. But you say even as you drove away, you knew it was...
I did, I had a feeling, but so they talk about the journey from the head to the heart, and the heart was telling me no, and the heart wasn't getting much of a show.
Yeah.
But I could still feel it there. I knew it was wrong, but the head was driving me.
Yeah, you'll be all right. You've got it beat. Go for it.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, a lie, a complete con job.
Yeah. So you left. What happened? You were driving.
I went straight down to an old environment, an old friend, and was drinking that night. Straight back to it.
And did you, in your heart of hearts, know that this is how that journey, that car journey, was going to end?
Did I, in my heart of hearts? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
So
was that what I was listening to? No.
So you were listening to your head.
Yeah.
Or
if you want to put it that way. Yeah.
But your heart was, this is wrong.
Yeah.
So literally the same day that you left after 8.5 months, you turned back to the drugs and the alcohol?
Yep. And it was necessary, because there was that knowing and that feeling, and I was a bit heartbroken. I left a lot of people that I love and people that loved me, and I was heartbroken, so there was a necessity for me to cloak that. And I think the reason that my alcoholism and my experience during that time away and in relapse was so big was because I had so much to hide from.
So when you were lifting that first glass of beer, wine, spirits, whatever it was, to your lips on that day that you'd left Dooralong, what was happening for you?
Oh. See, I'm looking at it with a new pair of glasses on now, so it's hard for me to imagine, but it feels weird in my stomach thinking about it, put it that way. So it was a big deal.
Yeah.
It makes me feel sad. I feel sad that that's what I was doing to myself.
And what happened from there?
Look, I worked. I'm a worker. I'm a good worker, and so I had money to play, and I would play on the weekends. And I was living with a friend of mine who manages to keep his playing up to the weekends, and so that worked for a while until he went away. But when he went away and I was on my own, isolated at his place, relatively, it just took off. It really took off, and I started doing insane things and going on insane benders and missing work and really putting myself in dangerous situations, and then coming back with all the remorse and redoubling my efforts at work and life to compensate for the fact that I knew that I was just on a bad path.
So the level of addiction you had at that time, was it more or less the same as
It's the same old,
Same old.
but I'd gone a bit further down that rabbit hole, if you will.
Yeah. And how long did that last for?
For that 6 months,
Yeah.
and towards the end there, I lost my license, high range drink driving. Thank God I didn't hurt anyone, and then I ended up, coming out of a blackout more or less in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam after travelling over there with an associate from work after a big day, Melbourne Cup day last year. I vaguely remember booking tickets. I vaguely remember being on a bus to the airport, but there's a lot of that stuff that I still to this point don't remember.
So you went to the races?
Went to the club,
Yeah.
and watched the races there, and then
The next thing you're in
The
Ho
next-
Chi Minh City.
pretty much the next part of solid memory that I have was waking up in a hotel room and coming out of the hotel room and freaking out because I was not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah. So there was no plan to do this before you went to
It
the
was
races?
something that just came up in an inebriated state. And, and in my life at that point, I wanted to run away because I created such a life for me down there. I wasn't very happy. I can see now I was looking to just run away. And then also at the same time, I also see that I was at the end.
And you were on your own, no mates with you?
I had an argument with my mate on one of the first nights in Vietnam, and I left him to his own devices, and I went off to another city and ended up in a hotel room with copious amounts of vodka, which is very cheap over there, and copious amounts of Valium, which is legal over there. And it was only when I came back to Dooralong that, with a caseworker, I realised that that's not a party.
No.
So
That's quite dangerous.
I was. Look, I was. There was.
You're in a foreign country. There's no no Medicare, nobody to pick up the pieces, no family, and you're hitting, Valium, other drugs, and cheap alcohol.
Yeah, it was dire, and I was very unhappy and very. I was at the end. I know I was at the end.
Yeah.
And that's when I got on my knees and I prayed because that's not what I wanted.
So, how many days into Vietnam was this?
I had booked over there for a couple of weeks, so it was towards the end of the couple of weeks.
You realised that on your own you were pretty helpless.
That's right. On my own and of my own, under my own steam. This is what I deal myself in life. This is the life that I deal myself, and I was at the end and convinced that there was only one way to go forward, and that was to end it. And I was at the end. I was. Yeah, I was convinced, put it that way.
Sounds as if that drunken trip that ended you up in Vietnam, it's going to be one of those moments in your life that you look back on and you can see that it could have ended very well or it could have ended very badly.
It gives me a very nauseous feeling whenever I think about that period of my life.
Yeah, you were at the crossroads.
I believe so.
Yeah. Fortunately, you're still here. Fortunately, you took the right turn.
I was lifted out of that hotel room and I was put back to Dooralong. I could not say that there was. I was involved, but I was led. I was lifted because I was at that point. I could not see any way forward, and I prayed. And then I contacted Dooralong. They said, if you can get here, we can get you in, which is a strange thing in itself.
There's usually a 2 or 3 month waiting list, isn't
That's
there?
right, but you're going to have to detox. So I had my flight booked. I had enough alcohol and Valium to get me on the flight. I got back to Sydney Airport. I had enough money to get another bottle. I was worried about going into detox in public because I was going to start shaking and maybe have a seizure. And when I got back to Sydney and I got to the airport, I was at the duty free looking at a bottle which was basically exactly the same amount as money that I had.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't buy it, and I just couldn't have any more. And so I got on the train, and on the halfway up to this area, I was shaking violently on the train. And by the time I got to the ER at Wyong Hospital, I was very, very violently shaking, and I just turned up and said, "My name's David, I'm an alcoholic, and I've stopped drinking." And they took me in, and they put me in detox. Now, that of itself may not be the standard reply for them, but in my case it was. And in my case, 9 days later, I was back at Dooralong.
Somebody was opening doors for you.
Yeah,
Yeah. here on Riemann 94.9. We're talking to David this morning, who was explaining to us how on his first time at Dooralong he discharged himself, really, but it didn't turn out well. He got extremely drunk one stage and just found himself in Ho Chi Minh City. That sounds very dramatic, but it's true, isn't it, David?
It's a true story. Yeah.
So he found himself in Ho Chi Minh City, and he really was at the crossroads. It could have turned out very well, or it could have turned out, well, you don't really want to think about it. Fortunately, towards the end of his stay in Vietnam, he just got down on his knees and prayed to God, and God opened a few doors for him, and you find yourself back at Dooralong.
Yeah, in a very quick time, and you know, considering where I'd come from and the condition that I was in, unscathed, yeah, it was quite amazing. It really was.
So you're doing the course again.
Mm-hmm.
How does it feel different for you?
Authenticity was the main thing for me this time. I mean, I've always felt unworthy, so, you know, trying to create a persona that was worthy was a big thing for me. And this time around, through the love of Jesus, I'm fine as me. Every part of me is okay. I'm not perfect. There's no doubt about that. And I'm not squeaky clean. There's no doubt about that. But I'm loved.
Yeah, as you are.
As I am.
Yeah, no need to fix ourselves up before we go to Christ. He takes us just as we are.
That's it. And he loves me. And something so powerful, loving something as small as me, it really takes a huge weight off me, and I'm able to live freely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this spiritual dimension, this spiritual part of yourself, it wasn't really being fed the first time round at Dooralong.
No, I don't think so. Like we talked about before, this journey from the head to the heart, I've always been led by the head, and the heart didn't really get much of a show in. And nowadays I can feel things are a lot different in that regard. I use my heart now for a lot more stuff than I used to, and I'm finding that things open up, and where life was cagey for me now, it's an open field, and you know, everything, there seems to be purpose and hope in my life now, and it's growing slowly, you know, and it's not going to be rushed. It is a journey, but each day I wake up and I have faith and hope.
That business you talk about, listening to your heart and acting upon what your heart wants rather than your head, that's sort of quite difficult for guys to do, I think, isn't it? Because they're not very good at opening up and admitting that they have an emotional or a spiritual side.
I was brought up like that, you know, and I'm not like that. And I think therein lies it, you know. And I was talking before about Jesus bringing that out in me, and just the freedom of actually being to accept how I am, you know, and I'm quite soft and gentle in many ways. And in many ways I'm quite fearful and scared. You know?
It does make you vulnerable, I think, once
absolutely. And like I said before, but someone's got my back, I know that.
Yeah, and certainly from the story you've told us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So how long have you been there now?
I've been back this time for just over 3 months.
Yeah. And the spiritual side feels different for you? You're going to one of the local Salvation Army churches?
Yeah, I go to East Lakes at Belmont. I love that church, it's thriving. And it was just the church that they sent me to. I was given the opportunity of picking a church, and I just said, look, you tell me. I'll go where he sends me.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, it's been amazing for me. The experiences I have with the Holy Spirit there are just amazing. So I look forward to Sunday every week. Yeah.
Where have your family and friends been on this journey?
My relationships are being restored. My mother lives overseas. My father lives down in the Southern Highlands, past Sydney, down south. And you know, I think the change in me has brought along a realisation of how hard it would have been to watch me over the years. I carried a lot of blame, and that's been released. And now I see that you know, my family are quite important to me, and I want the best for them as they've always wanted for me.
Yeah.
And those relationships are being restored today, and I'm trying to put some nurture into those relationships. And funnily enough, I spend a bit of time with my dad, and we get along just fine.
Yeah. But like you say, it would have been very hard for parents to watch a child spiral out of control, knowing there's nothing they can do about it. When you're a little kid, you fall over, they sort of kiss it better for you. But once you're an adult, there's nothing they can do for you, so they just have to be there.
It
must be so hard.
It wouldn't be easy.
So those relationships were fractured but are slowly being restored.
Correct.
Yeah.
Through Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you leave Dooralong this time, will you remain on the Central Coast, or will you go down to where your dad is, or somewhere new?
I had a meeting with my caseworker the other day, and we were talking about this, and I, you know, at Dooralong they do like you to have a plan.
Yeah.
You know, I can't at the moment. My plan is to stay at Dooralong for a while and really work on my spiritual relationship, really work on the growth I can do, and probably work on being a member of that community. So, you know, as much as whether they like to hear it or not, I'm probably going to hang around as long as I can. I mean, really, like we talked about before, you know, it's at the end on the other side, so
yeah.
I really need to foster this new life.
Exactly. A second chance.
Yeah. And look, maybe more than a second, but it's the chance, I think, for me.
As that music track from CC Winans was just fading out, I thought the words were really appropriate. I don't know whether you heard them, David, about your life has purpose now and Jesus is in your life and direction and all the rest of it. That sounds, it sort of pretty much summarises where you're at the moment, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So look, you're on your second time round. This time round, you've made yourself a little bit vulnerable by admitting that, you know, you're not Superman, and none of us are, that you need help, and you turn to Jesus for that help, and in His grace, He always provides it. So that spiritual side of you is much more important. What about, we were talking about the future, and you were saying it's a bit too early to think what the future holds for you, because you just want to sort of do a bit of a stock take and make sure everything's good with you.
I mean, I guess when I think about when I think about future and life, I'm thinking about things of career and family and those sort of things, and the journey I'm on. There's quite a bit of path to be laid before that stuff. I know I've always been a good worker. I could go out right now and get a job.
Yeah.
A job is not going to keep me clean and sober.
No.
So I just need to prioritise, and the priority for me at the moment is the journey that I'm on with Jesus, and also being in communion with men and my brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be learnt there for me. So that's the journey I'm on, and what's going to happen in my future hopefully is just the continuation of that, and everything gets taken in its stride, I think.
And when you talk about prioritising matters, I mean, there could be no higher priority attached to your relationship with God, because, you know, that affects the rest of your eternal life.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so.
So that's number one. Get yourself sorted with God and church, and
that's how I start the day.
Yeah, that's how you start your day. So what's life like at Dooralong then? What have they got you doing?
I work in the kitchen. So
first or second shift? See, I know
I'm
about this now.
I'm at lunch. I'm at lunchtime.
So you get a bit of a lie in. You don't have to be up too early to make the breakfast.
Oh, look, I don't have to be up to make the breakfast. I get to eat the breakfast, but I am up early anyway. I like to get up early. I like to watch the sunrise when I can. But you know, I do my lunch shift. I've been a dishy in a past job, and so I do the dishes.
Yeah.
But now there's, you know, younger people in the program coming through. I have that job has been handed over, and I've paid my dues there. So now I just do other things around the kitchen and clean up and try and pick up those pieces that may be left behind a little bit, and see what's busy and what needs to be done. So
when you see new people coming through, do you see glimpses of yourself in them from your previous time at Dooralong?
Oh, look, I think out there we're all a bit same but different. And I do, and I try and come alongside people. I also understand that everyone's got a different journey, you know, and what I find my restitution in Jesus, and I hope that people can find that as well. So I guess while I'm coming alongside people, praying for them in my own time is also another thing that I think is really, I think works a lot better. I mean, what works for me may not necessarily work for someone else, and it's not right for me to force it onto them. But I find that I'm developing a lot of compassion for those around me.
And you spend
good
time each
people out
day in
there.
prayer and
Look, I try to. There's always room for more.
Exactly.
Isn't there? You know,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be great to settle let alone an hour every day and just get right into it? And am I there at the moment? No, I'm not.
No. But at the same time, it would be wrong to beat yourself up and feel guilt for not doing
Absolutely,
it.
it's counterproductive, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and the blessings
what
that I
God
get
wants.
in the love of Jesus. He loves me either way, and He wants the best for me. But I am into the Bible every morning, you know, and I am on my knees.
It's been a delight to talk to you this morning.
Thank
David.
you.
Thank you for being so open and honest about your journey. It would be good to know how you're getting on in 6 months' time.
Yeah, well, yeah, it will be
um,
interesting.
You've got our phone number.
Yeah.
Give us a ring. Come back. If
Sure,
you've got
I'd like
any
that.
news to share, that would be really good.
I'd like to come back. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
that would be absolutely super.
You've been listening to an encore presentation of the Dooralong stories, which can be heard live every Wednesday at 10 a.m. and repeated 8 p.m. Sunday and 1 a.m. Wednesday, right here on 94.9 rema.cc.